John Barry held his survey drawing above the closing table and didn't sit down. Everyone else had a place. Brian sat beside the family lawyer, wearing the gray jacket he used when he wanted to look older than 34. Lori had both hands around a paper cup of coffee. Connor leaned back with one ankle on his knee, as if the meeting were taking longer than it deserved. Across from them, Prairie Grove Development had brought a property manager, a banker, and 3 neat folders marked with yellow tabs. Paige sat at the far end beside Daniel Cardenas. Her father's wooden pen case rested in front of her. Brian looked at John. "We're ready for your certification." John kept his eyes on the drawing. He had spent years working under Isaac Weaver. He knew exactly how Isaac marked a corner when he wanted another surveyor to recognize his hand. "I can certify what my crew found," John said. "I can't certify the boundary you gave me." The room went quiet. Brian's lawyer stopped turning pages. "What does that mean?" Lori asked. John set the drawing flat. Near the orchard edge, one dark line cut away from the larger tract. Beside it was the impression of a licensed surveyor's seal and a lot number nobody in Paige's family had wanted to discuss. Brian glanced at Paige. "This is what you've been doing?" Paige felt every face turn toward her. 3 weeks earlier, she might have apologized for taking up space at the table. She might have lowered her voice. She might even have let Brian explain her own question back to her. She didn't. "I've been finding out what Dad left," she said. "He left you a box of old pens. That's what you told me." Brian's mouth tightened. "A pen case doesn't make you a landowner." "No," Paige said, "but a recorded boundary might." The county recorder reached for John's drawing. "Let me see the seal," she said. That was the moment Brian finally looked worried. 3 weeks earlier, Paige hadn't known there was a boundary to find. She knew her father was dead. She knew the funeral flowers had started turning brown before anyone removed them from the farmhouse dining room. She knew Lori had put Isaac's brown work boots in a donation bag, then taken them back out, because seeing the empty space by the door felt worse. Paige also knew she had no clear place to go. During Isaac's last months, she had given up her apartment above a pharmacy in Winterset and moved into the farmhouse guest room. She told herself it was practical. Her father needed rides to appointments in Des Moines. Lori hated driving in city traffic. Brian was always at the survey office, and Connor was usually somewhere that required loud music and no explanation. Paige handled the small things. She sorted Isaac's pills into a plastic tray every Sunday. She warmed soup when he didn't want dinner. She kept a folded blanket on the passenger seat because his legs got cold during the long drive home. She also worked part-time at Weaverland Surveying. She wasn't licensed and never pretended to be. She scanned field notes, checked addresses, prepared invoice envelopes, and cleaned up the old job files nobody else wanted to touch. Isaac liked records in order. He could forgive a bent fence post more easily than a missing page. Then he died in March. By the second week of April, Brian had changed the alarm code at the office. He sent the new number to Connor by mistake and never sent it to Paige at all. The will reading took place on a Thursday morning in a conference room above a bank. Rain ran down the windows in thin lines. The room smelled like damp coats and burnt coffee. Paige arrived first. She sat near the end of the table and kept Isaac's funeral card inside her purse, though she didn't know why. The photograph showed him at 60, not 65. He stood beside a yellow survey tripod with one hand resting on it, smiling at someone outside the frame. Lori came in with Brian. Connor followed them, carrying a gas station cup large enough to need both hands. Nobody argued over seats. They already seemed to know where they belonged. The family lawyer, Martin Ellis, had known Isaac for years. He waited until everyone settled, then removed his glasses and cleaned them with a cloth. "I know this is difficult," he said. Connor pulled the lid off his coffee. "We can skip that part." Lori looked at him. "Connor." "What?" "He knows we know." Martin put his glasses back on. "Then we'll proceed." Paige expected the papers to sound important. They didn't. They made the same dry scrape as the invoices she had mailed every Friday. Martin began with the business. Isaac's ownership of Weaverland Surveying, along with the office building on Court Avenue, passed to Brian. The company name, client list, active contracts, archive field books, and business accounts went with it. Brian gave one slow nod. He had known. Paige saw it at once. He didn't look surprised or relieved. He looked ready. Martin turned the page. The farmhouse passed to Lori, along with Isaac's personal bank accounts, investment account, household property, and the visible interests attached to the homestead estate. Lori pressed her lips together. She had known too. She reached for Brian's hand. He covered hers for a moment. Martin read the next section. Isaac's pickup truck, trailer, field equipment, and newer electronic instruments went to Connor. Connor sat forward. The red truck? The truck described by its identification number, Martin said. Yes. And the robotic station? The equipment inventory is attached. Connor smiled for the first time that morning. That thing's worth real money. Connor, Lori said again, but there wasn't much force behind it. Paige waited. Martin read a few smaller gifts. Isaac's watch went to Brian. A walnut gun cabinet went to a cousin in Creston. His collection of county plat books remained with the survey company. Each item left the room without moving. Paige watched the pages grow thinner in Martin's hand. She began wondering whether her name had been left out by accident. Then she hated herself for wondering. Her father had been buried for 19 days, and she was counting what remained on a table. Martin reached the last page. To my daughter, Paige Weaver, I leave my walnut drafting pen case and its contents. He looked up. That was all. Rain tapped the glass behind him. Paige heard Connor take a drink. Brian shifted in his chair. Lori stared at Martin as if she expected him to keep reading. Is there another page? Paige asked. Martin's expression changed by less than an inch. It was enough. No, he said. Connor set down his cup. The little box from his desk. Martin folded his hands. I believe so. The one with the old ink pens? Yes. Connor gave a short laugh before he caught himself. Brian looked down, but Paige saw the corner of his mouth move. Lori reached across the table. Honey, they meant something to him. Paige didn't take her hand. Did he say why? She asked Martin. The will doesn't give a reason. Brian leaned toward her. Dad knew you liked his old things. She looked at him. I worked in his office too. I didn't say you didn't. You got the office. I ran the cruise page. You started running them last year. I've been licensed for 9. Martin raised one hand. This isn't the place. Brian sat back. I'm not fighting with her. That was one of his habits. He could say something sharp, then announce there was no fight. It left the other person holding all the anger. Martin opened a cabinet behind him and removed a narrow wooden case wrapped in brown paper. Isaac's handwriting crossed the top. For Paige. The paper was fastened with a red wax seal. It wasn't fancy. Isaac had pressed his small professional mark into it, the same mark he put beside corrections on old survey drafts. Martin passed the package down the table. Paige held it with both hands. The case was heavier than she expected. She could feel something shift faintly inside. Connor leaned closer. Open it? Not here, Paige said. Why not? Because it's mine. That quieted him. Martin explained the remaining paperwork. Paige heard only pieces. Taxes, transfer documents, final accounting. Lori asked about signature dates. Brian asked when he could take formal control of the company accounts. Paige kept her thumb over the wax mark. When the meeting ended, Martin asked her to remain for a moment. Brian noticed. Something else? He asked. Just routine administration, Martin said. Brian glanced at Paige, then left with Lori and Connor. Through the conference room wall came the low ding of the elevator. Martin waited until it carried them away. Did your father ever discuss the pen case with you? He asked. No. He brought it to my office when he updated the personal property page last year. He was particular about the wording. What wording? That the case and its contents went to you. Paige looked down at the package. Did you see what was inside? No, it was already sealed. Did you ask? I asked whether he wanted the contents listed separately. He said no. That sounded like Isaac. He could answer a question completely while leaving a person with less information than before. Martin slid a business card toward her. There's another issue. It isn't part of the will, but you need to know. Paige waited. Brian says your employment with Weaver Land Surveying ended when he assumed control. She felt the words before she understood them. I'm scheduled tomorrow. Brian asked me to tell you not to report. He asked you? He thought it would be easier. Paige looked toward the closed door. For him. Martin didn't answer. She put his card in her purse. Anything else? He also said Lori needs the guest room cleared by Sunday. Paige stared at him. Martin's face held the tired discomfort of someone delivering a decision he hadn't made. "Sunday," she repeated. "I'm sorry." Outside the bank, the rain had turned colder. Paige stood under the awning, with the wrapped case pressed to her coat. Brian's black SUV waited by the curb. Connor was already inside. Lori sat in the passenger seat, staring straight ahead. Brian stood beside the open driver's door. "Paige." She kept walking. "Paige, wait." She stopped near the rear bumper. "You could have told me yourself," she said. "I was going to." "When?" "Today," Martin told me. "I know, I asked him to. That isn't telling me yourself." Brian lowered his voice. "You don't have a position anymore. I had one yesterday. The business can't carry people because they're family." Paige looked through the rear window at Connor. He turned his head away. "What position does Connor have?" she asked. "He'll help with field work." "He doesn't know field work. He knows equipment. He knows how to sell equipment." Brian exhaled. "This is exactly why I didn't want to do this in the conference room. You didn't do it anywhere." Lori opened her door and stepped out. Rain dotted the shoulders of her cream-colored coat. "Nobody's trying to hurt you," she said. Paige looked at her. "You need my room by Sunday. It isn't your room." The answer came quickly. Lori heard it too. Her face tightened. "I only mean that the house needs sorting out," she said. "There are papers everywhere. Your father's clothes, medical bills. I can't think with all of it around me. My things fit in 2 bags. Then Sunday shouldn't be difficult." Brian rubbed the back of his neck. He wanted the scene finished. He wanted to get into the warm car and begin the part of his life where everything belonged to him. "There may be a solution," he said. Paige waited. "The orchard cottage is empty." Lori looked at him. "Brian, what?" "It is?" The cottage sat at the far edge of the Weaver property on Bellflower Orchard Road. Isaac had used it for storage long before Paige moved back to Winterset. The roof sagged above the rear wall. One window had been covered with plywood for so long that Paige couldn't remember seeing glass there. Brian continued. "She can stay there temporarily." "Does it have water?" Lori asked. "It has a well." "That isn't what I asked." Paige looked at Brian. "Why temporarily?" He hesitated, and she knew there was another thing everyone understood except her. "We have an offer on the homestead tract," he said. "What tract?" "All of it. The full 86 acres. Paige stared past him toward the rain-dark street. "You're selling Dad's land?" "Lori is agreeing to the sale. I'm handling it." Lori folded her arms. "It's too much property for me. The taxes, the upkeep, the farmhouse roof. Your father left accounts, but that money won't last forever. How long has there been an offer?" Brian looked at Lori. Lori looked at the bank windows. "Since before the funeral?" Paige asked. "Discussion started earlier," Brian said. "Nothing was signed while Dad was alive." "How much?" $2,400,000. The number landed harder than the will had. Paige looked at the narrow package in her hands. Brian got the company, Lori got the house and accounts. Connor got the truck and equipment. They were preparing to sell the ground beneath all of it. She had a sealed box. "Who's buying?" she asked. "Prairie Grove Development." "What are they building?" "It hasn't been finalized, so houses. Probably mixed residential." "And the orchard?" Brian glanced toward the car again. "It's included." Isaac's orchard wasn't grand. Most people driving Bellflower Orchard Road barely noticed it. The oldest trees leaned at different angles, with trunks split and patched from old storms. Kelly Neal had kept them producing long after anyone sensible would have replaced them. Paige remembered Isaac bringing home small, uneven apples every September. He'd line them along the kitchen windowsill and complain when Lori moved them. "When does it close?" Paige asked. 21 days. "And after that?" "The cottage comes down." There it was. Brian's solution was a condemned room on land already promised to someone else. He softened his voice. "It's rent-free, Paige. It gives you time. 3 weeks. More than you have now." Lori stepped closer. "Take it. Get yourself settled. We can talk after the closing." Paige knew what that meant. After the closing, everyone would be generous in ways that required nothing from them. She looked at the bank doors, then at the family car. "I'll be out by Sunday," she said. Brian nodded as if they had reached an agreement between equals. "I'll leave the cottage key at the office. You change the alarm code." He paused. "I'll bring it to the farmhouse." Paige walked away before any of them could call that kindness. On Sunday afternoon, she drove out Bellflower Orchard Road with 2 bags, a grocery box of dishes, and Isaac's pen case on the passenger seat. The rain had passed, but the ditches still held brown water. Clouds hung low over the fields. The Weaver farmhouse disappeared behind her as the road curved along the orchard. The cottage stood beyond the third gate. Brian had left the key under a cracked flower pot. He hadn't come to meet her. Paige unlocked the door and pushed with her shoulder. Damp air rolled out. The one-room cottage held a rusted stove, a narrow iron bed frame, and 3 wooden chairs that didn't match. Plaster had fallen beside the chimney. Mouse droppings covered the bottom cabinet. She found the breaker box and flipped the main switch. One ceiling bulb came on, dim and yellow. The water pump groaned when she tried the kitchen tap. Nothing came out. "Good," she said to the empty room. That would have been too much. She spent the next 2 hours carrying out ruined boxes and sweeping dead insects from the windowsills. Near sunset, she found a blue tarp in the shed and climbed onto a chair to cover a leak above the bed. The chair shifted. Paige caught the windowsill before she fell. The loose frame moved under her hand, and cold air slipped through the gap. She climbed down slowly. Her palms were shaking. That was when someone knocked. A woman stood outside in muddy boots, holding a red toolbox. Her dark hair was tied back, and a pruning saw hung from her belt. "Paige Weaver?" "Yes." "I'm Kelly Neal. Your dad said if anybody ever tried living in this place again, they'd need the well primed before they needed advice." Paige looked at the toolbox. "Did Brian send you?" Kelly's expression answered before she did. "Brian doesn't send me anywhere." She stepped past Paige and set the toolbox beside the sink. Outside, the orchard rows faded into the evening. Several trees carried white tags tied loosely around their branches. Paige had never noticed them before. Kelly worked the pump handle twice, then stopped. "Needs a new seal," she said. "I've got one in my truck." "You knew my dad?" "For 15 years. Paige looked toward the trees. "I thought you just bought apples from him." Kelly gave her a careful look. "Is that what they told you?" Before Paige could answer, Kelly went back outside. That night, clean water finally ran from the tap. Kelly left after making Paige promise not to use the stove until its pipe was checked. Paige ate crackers and cheese on the floor. She wrapped herself in Isaac's old wool blanket and listened to wind move through the orchard. The pen case sat beside her. She broke the red wax seal. Inside lay 6 drafting pens fitted into dark velvet. Each had been cleaned. A folded cloth rested beside a small bottle of dried ink. Paige touched the pen Isaac had used at his desk. The case made a faint click underneath her hand. She pressed the velvet lining. One end lifted. There was a second layer beneath it. Paige removed the pens and pulled the lining free. A shallow false bottom opened under the tray. Inside was a folded corner of an old survey plat and a note in Isaac's handwriting. She unfolded the note first. "Paige, start where the 3rd row remembers the first orchard. Find my mark at the benchmark. The ground will tell you what the paper missed." Dad Paige read it twice. Then she opened the plat corner. A boundary line crossed the yellowed paper. Beside a small circle was Isaac's engraved mark. Under it, written in faded ink, were 2 words: Lot 7. The words meant nothing to Paige, and that bothered her more than if they had frightened her. Isaac had taught her to read enough survey drawings to sort his files. She knew a north arrow from a bearing. She knew little circles could mean iron pins, pipes, or other fixed points. She knew the heavy outside line usually mattered more than anything shaded inside it. This paper showed one corner of something. It didn't show the full shape. It didn't show an owner. The date had been torn away with the rest of the page. Paige laid the plat on the floor beside the note. Then she took pictures of both with her phone. Her first thought was to call Brian. She even opened his contact and held her thumb over the button. If this was an old work paper Isaac had tucked away, Brian might recognize it. He now owned the files that could explain it. Then she remembered his face outside the bank. 3 weeks rent-free. More than you have now. Brian hadn't offered the cottage because he thought she might want it. He had offered it because he thought it was already gone. Paige closed his contact. She searched for Madison County property maps instead. The cottage had enough cell service near the front window if she stood still. The county website loaded one piece at a time. She found the Weaver homestead by road address. A blue outline surrounded the entire property. The information panel described one tract containing 86 acres. Lori's name appeared as the current estate contact. There was no separate cottage parcel. There was no orchard lot. There was no Lot 7. Paige widened the map, then narrowed it again. She tried searching the words. Nothing came up. Maybe Isaac's paper belonged to another property. Surveyors kept fragments from old jobs. They made notes on whatever was close. Her father could have used an outdated plat to leave a private message about a favorite tree, but he had sealed it beneath the pens. He had built a false bottom. Paige looked at the note again. The ground will tell you what the paper missed. She put the papers back inside the hidden compartment. The pens went over them, and the velvet tray settled into place so neatly that the seam disappeared. Then she wrapped the whole case in her wool blanket and slid it beneath the iron bed frame. She didn't sleep much. The cottage made unfamiliar sounds all night. Wind pressed against the plywood window. Something scratched inside the wall near the stove and went silent whenever she moved. At 2:30, water tapped into a metal bowl she had placed below the roof leak. By morning, Paige had made one decision. She wasn't going to hand the note to Brian and wait for him to tell her it meant nothing. She would find the third row herself. Kelly returned just after 7, with a length of stovepipe strapped into the bed of her green pickup. 2 plastic crates filled the passenger seat. Each held jars of amber apple butter with white labels. Paige met her outside. "You sell those?" Kelly glanced through the truck window. "When people remember to pay me." She lifted out the stovepipe. "I've got a delivery at 9, so I can give you 40 minutes. After that, you're choosing between a safe chimney and me disappointing a grocery store owner. I need to show you something first." Kelly looked toward the cottage. Paige brought the pen case outside, but didn't open it. She took out her phone and showed Kelly the photographs. Kelly read the note without speaking. Then she enlarged the plat corner with 2 fingers. "Where did you get this?" It was under the lining. "In the pen case?" "Yes." Kelly took the phone closer to the morning light. "That's Isaac's mark. You're sure?" "I've seen it on tree maps." "What tree maps?" "The ones he made for me." Kelly handed back the phone. "Get your boots." Paige looked down at her sneakers. "Those are not boots. They're all I have." Kelly opened the truck's rear door and pulled out a pair of rubber boots spattered with dried mud. "I keep extras for people who think orchards come with sidewalks." They were one size too large. Paige wore them anyway. Kelly led her past the cottage and through a break in the old wire fence. The orchard sloped gently toward a creek hidden behind cottonwoods. Morning mist sat low between the rows. Up close, the trees looked more cared for than Paige had realized. Dead branches had been cut cleanly. Young shoots were tied to supports with soft cloth. Small metal tags hung near the trunks, each marked with a variety name and a year. "Who owns the orchard business?" Paige asked. "I do." "I thought this was Dad's orchard. It was his ground." "The fruit was mine if I did the work." "That sounds informal." "It was informal." Kelly ducked under a low branch. "I prune, spray, pick, and haul. I pay for equipment. I sell the fruit and everything I make from it." Isaac got the property tax agricultural credit and all the apples he could carry without throwing his back out. "When did that start?" 2011. Paige stopped. Kelly took 3 more steps before noticing. "What?" "The note says the third row remembers the first orchard." "That could mean several things." "It started the same year as your arrangement." Kelly's face remained still, but her attention changed. "Did Dad ever mention Lot 7? "No." "Did he make a survey that year?" "Isaac made surveys every year." "For this ground." Kelly looked toward the far end of the orchard. He measured the cottage side. "I remember because he put orange caps on 3 pipes and told me not to hit them with the mower." "What pipes?" "Boundary markers." "Where?" "If I knew exactly, we wouldn't be standing here." Kelly resumed walking. The orchard didn't have straight rows anymore. Some trees had died and been replaced. Others had spread wide enough to force the mower around them. What looked like the third row near the cottage became the 4th row farther downhill. Paige took out the note. "Which trees are the oldest?" Depends what he meant by old. "The oldest trunks are mostly in the center. The oldest living varieties aren't. The first orchard sounds like the first trees. Or the original planting pattern." Kelly pointed across the slope. "This place was laid out in the 1870s. It wasn't one orchard then. It was 3 family plots with gaps between them." "How do you know that?" "I spent 15 years trying to keep the trees alive." There was no pride in the answer. Kelly said it the way a mechanic might mention knowing which wrench fit. They reached a broad tree with a hollow in its trunk. White blossoms covered one side. The other side was dark and bare. Kelly touched the bark. "This is a yellow bellflower. It's older than the farmhouse kitchen edition. Your dad refused to let me take it out. Is it dying? Everything alive is doing that. It still gives fruit. Paige looked back toward the cottage. From there, the rows appeared different. The first two followed the road. A third angled away, following the older slope. Could that be the third row? Kelly followed her gaze. That's the original north line. They walked uphill again, counting from a stone-filled depression Kelly said had once been the first row. The ground was soft enough to hold their boot prints. At the third row, Kelly knelt near the base of a tree and pushed aside last year's leaves. No pipe, she said. They checked the next tree, then the next. Paige watched the time on her phone. Kelly's 40 minutes had nearly passed. You should make your delivery. Kelly kept clearing leaves with one gloved hand. She'll complain either way. Who? Marcy at the grocery store. If I'm early, she isn't ready. If I'm late, I've ruined her whole morning. Kelly moved to another tree. Paige studied the plat photograph. A dotted line ended near the small circle. Beside it, Isaac had drawn 3 short marks, almost like fence posts. Was there a fence here? There used to be one along the old lane. What happened to the lane? Your brother plowed part of it under 2 years ago. Paige turned. Brian? He wanted easier access for the big mower. Kelly stood and pointed toward a shallow rise. The lane ran there. They followed it through tall grass. A section of woven wire remained caught inside an ash tree. Farther down, one rotted post leaned almost flat. 3 short marks. Paige checked the picture again. The circle should be near the end. The end of the fence? Maybe. They searched around the final post. Kelly found the depression first. It was half hidden beneath a flat limestone rock no wider than a dinner plate. She hooked her fingers under the edge and lifted. Worms twisted in the damp soil. There was no pipe. Paige crouched beside her. Maybe it was removed. Maybe. Kelly sounded unconvinced. She pressed a gloved finger into the soil. This rock hasn't been here long. How long? A few years. See the pale side? It was underground before somebody turned it. Kelly lifted the rock again and looked beneath it. A narrow channel ran through the soil. It could have been left by water. It could also have been made by a metal rod dragged sideways. Paige took pictures. Kelly replaced the stone exactly as they found it. You think Brian moved the marker? I didn't say that. He changed the lane. With Isaac's permission. Dad knew about it? He was angry, but he knew. Kelly wiped her glove on the grass. Don't decide what happened before you have something solid. Paige stood. The note led us here. It led us to a rock. It led us to the end of an old fence in the 3rd original row. That isn't proof. No, but it isn't nothing. Kelly checked her watch and swore softly. I have to go. They walked back toward the cottage. The sun had begun burning through the mist. Paige could hear traffic on the county road. At the pickup, Kelly opened the driver's door, then stopped. Don't dig around survey markers, she said. If we find one, we leave it where it is. Why? Because moving one creates a mess, and your family has enough of those. How do we find it without digging? I have a magnetic locator at the cidery. You own survey equipment? I own a long metal detector that keeps tractor parts out of my mower blades. Kelly looked toward the orchard. I'll bring it after lunch. What about the stove? Tomorrow? You said the chimney wasn't safe. Don't light it. Kelly drove away with the jars rattling beside her. Paige spent the morning on the cottage. She pulled damp plaster from the wall and found solid boards beneath most of it. She washed the cabinets with hot water and dish soap. A mouse nest filled one kitchen drawer, so she carried the drawer outside and left it in the sun. Working helped. Each task had an answer. Dirty water went out. Clean water went in. Loose nails could be pulled. Broken glass could be wrapped in newspaper. The note didn't work that way. At 11, Brian called. Paige let it ring once before answering. Are you at the cottage? He asked. Yes. How bad is it? You've seen it. Not inside lately. The roof leaks. The stovepipe is rusted through. The well works now. Who fixed the well? Kelly. There was a short silence. Kelly Neal? How many Kellys tend the orchard? I didn't know she was still doing that. She says she has an arrangement with Dad. It was never a lease. I didn't say it was. Brian's voice changed, becoming patient in the way that usually meant he wanted information. What have you two been talking about? The cottage, the trees, anything else? Paige looked at the pen case on the table. Why? No reason. I don't want you getting involved in orchard business. That whole section is under contract. I'm living in it, temporarily, I remember. Brian waited. Paige let him. Finally, he said, "A property crew may be out there this week." "What kind of crew?" "Pre-closing inspection, soil, access, basic site work." "Do they know I'm here?" "I'll tell them. Tell me before anyone arrives. They won't bother you." "That wasn't what I asked." Another silence. "Fine," Brian said. "I'll let you know." He ended the call without saying goodbye. Paige set down the phone. Brian hadn't known Kelly still worked the orchard. He also hadn't asked whether Paige needed food, blankets, or help with the leaking roof. He had asked what they discussed. Kelly returned at 2 with a locator and a paper sack of sandwiches. She placed the food on the porch step. "Marcy gave me the ones that expire today." "Did you ruin her morning?" "Completely." They ate roast beef sandwiches beside the open cottage door. Kelly picked the onions from hers and dropped them back into the sack. Paige told her about Brian's call. "Property crew," Kelly said. "That can mean anything." He said this week, then we look now. The locator had a long yellow handle and a small control box. Kelly switched it on near her truck. It gave a high squeal. "Metal toolbox," she said. "So far it works." At the old fence line, it clicked over buried wire and squealed near rusted nails. Kelly adjusted the sensitivity. They moved slowly around the limestone rock. Nothing. Paige tried farther uphill. The locator remained quiet. Then she crossed the shallow channel in the soil. A low tone sounded. She stepped back. The tone stopped. Forward again. It returned. Kelly took the locator and swept the spot from 2 directions. The signal held beneath a patch of grass about 4 feet from the stone. They knelt and pulled the grass apart. The top of an iron pipe sat level with the earth. Dirt packed its center. It had been hidden so well that Paige's fingers passed over it before Kelly pointed it out. Kelly used a wooden handle to loosen the dirt without moving the pipe. A round metal cap appeared. Paige wiped it with the corner of her shirt. Stamped into the cap was Isaac's small engraved mark. For a while, neither woman spoke. Kelly sat back on her heels. "Well," she said, "now we have something solid." Paige opened the plat photograph. The mark matched. Even the shallow nick along one side appeared on both. "Why isn't it on the county map?" "I don't know." "Why did Dad hide a piece of the plat?" "I don't know that either." Kelly glanced toward the cottage. "But he expected you to find this pipe." Paige photographed the marker from every side. Then she measured its distance from the old fence post with Kelly's tape. They wrote the number on the back of the sandwich receipt. Before leaving, Kelly pushed the grass back around the cap. Paige placed the limestone rock where it had been. Anyone walking past would see nothing. She no longer believed the paper was a meaningless scrap from one of Isaac's old jobs. There was a marked corner in the ground. Her father had sealed its location inside the only thing he left her. The county's public map said that corner didn't exist. Paige put the sandwich receipt inside the pen case with the note. Then she called the recorder's office and asked what time the public records room opened. The woman who answered said 8:30, but the front doors unlocked at 8. Paige arrived at 8:12. She carried the plat photograph on her phone. The original remained beneath the pen tray at the cottage. She had also written Isaac's name, the road address, and the words Lot 7 on a grocery receipt. The public computer stood at a side counter near the recorder's service window. A clerk showed Paige how to search by owner, date, and legal description. "Start with the address," she said. "Then try the name if that doesn't bring it up." The address brought up the full Weaver tract. Paige opened the oldest available image, then moved forward through mortgage releases, tax notices, and 2 utility easements. Nothing divided the orchard from the rest. She searched Isaac's name. The screen returned hundreds of results because Isaac had signed surveys across the county. Paige narrowed the dates around 2011. Most entries were plats for other families. Several were surveyor's certificates. One concerned a drainage easement near Patterson. None mentioned Bellflower Orchard Road. She tried Lot 7. The computer produced subdivisions in Winterset, Earlham, and St. Charles. None belonged to Isaac. The clerk returned carrying a stack of mail. Any luck? No. Could something be recorded without showing up under the address? Sure. Older entries weren't always cross-indexed cleanly. Sometimes a legal description changes. Sometimes the name was entered differently. How do you find it? With a recording number, book and page. or enough patience. Paige showed her the photograph. Can you tell what this came from? The clerk enlarged it. Survey plat. Maybe a subdivision. Does that mark mean anything? It's probably the surveyor's stamp. It was my father's. The clerk looked from the screen to Paige. Isaac Weaver? Yes, I'm sorry. He was in here often. Did he file anything for his own land? I wouldn't remember. I started later. She studied the image again. Do you have the rest? No. A date? No. Book and page? No. Paige folded the grocery receipt, though it didn't need folding. The clerk lowered her voice. If it was recorded, we can find it. But a piece of an unrecorded survey isn't enough to search every book. What if it's missing from the computer? Then we use the paper index. Can I do that? You can, but you'll need a narrower date. We have cabinets going back more than a century. Paige looked at the rows of gray drawers along the wall. Start with 2011, she said. The clerk checked the clock. I can bring you the grantor index after I open the counter. While she worked, 2 employees carried a large document envelope into an office behind the service window. Prairie Grove Development was printed across the label. Paige recognized the name. Is that for Bellflower Orchard Road? The clerk followed her gaze. I can't discuss another party's documents before they're recorded. It's my family's property. Then your family or their attorney can give you a copy. Does it include the full 86 acres? The clerk's expression became careful. I can't tell you what's in a pending packet. So, it's pending. I didn't say that. You said before it's recorded. The clerk sighed. All I can tell you is that we received a request for preliminary review. That doesn't transfer anything. Does a preliminary review check old paper records? It checks the legal description presented with the packet. Paige understood enough to feel uneasy. If the description is wrong, then someone with a competing interest needs to bring evidence. We don't decide boundaries at the counter. The clerk went to the cabinet and returned with a heavy index book. Paige searched the handwritten entries under Isaac's name. The year covered more than 60 pages. She found sales, easements, mortgage releases, and survey affidavits. None clearly referred to the orchard. After an hour, her eyes hurt from the slanted handwriting. She searched under Weaver, then under the name of Isaac's first wife. Nothing. The clerk came over before 10. I wish Devin were here, she said. Who's Devin? Devin O'Connor. He was deputy recorder back then. He could remember a document from the color of the folder it came in. Does he still work here? Retired. Can I contact him? The clerk hesitated. I can't give out his personal number. Could you give him mine? That I can do. Paige wrote her name and phone number on the back of Martin's business card. Tell him it concerns Isaac Weaver and a filing from 2011. The clerk put the card beneath her keyboard. As Paige turned to leave, the large Prairie Grove envelope disappeared into the recorder's back office. She drove straight to the cottage. A white survey truck blocked the gate. 2 people in bright vests stood near the road. One held a measuring rod. The other drove a wooden stake into the ground. Fresh pink flags crossed the ditch. Paige parked behind the truck and walked toward them. The man at the stake removed his sunglasses. Paige. She recognized John Barry from the survey office. He had worked with Isaac before Brian was old enough to drive. His hair had gone mostly gray, but he still carried pencils in the front pocket of his vest. What are you doing? She asked. Boundary and topographic work. For Prairie Grove. For Weaver Land Surveying. Brian hired me as an independent surveyor. Why independent? Because Brian has an interest in the sale. The buyer wants another license on the boundary. John said it plainly. He wasn't ashamed of the work, but he wasn't comfortable finding her in the middle of it. How long will you be here? Several days. Brian said a property crew might come. He didn't say it was you. He told me the cottage was vacant. I'm clearly not vacant. John looked at her muddy borrowed boots. Clearly. A shout came from the orchard. The second crew member raised an arm. John answered with a wave, then turned back to Paige. We won't need the cottage. I may need access around it. The orchard is being worked. We'll stay out of the trees where we can. What does that mean? It means a boundary line doesn't move because a tree grew over it. Paige looked past him. Pink flags ran from the road toward the oldest rows. They didn't follow the orchard fence. They cut diagonally across Kelly's original north line. One flag stood beside the hollow yellow bellflower. Who gave you that line? The legal description Brian provided. Does it show a separate lot? John's eyes returned to her. What separate lot? Lot 7. The road noise seemed louder behind them. Where did you hear that? He asked. I found it on an old plat. Whose plat? Dad's? Let me see. Paige didn't move. John held out his hand, then let it fall. If Isaac surveyed something here, it could matter. The county map doesn't show it. County maps are for taxes. They aren't boundary surveys. The recorder's computer doesn't show it either. That means more, but it still isn't final. Did Brian tell you to look for an old boundary? No. Did he tell you Dad marked pipes in the orchard? John glanced toward his crew member. He gave me the current deed description and the proposed sale boundary. That wasn't my question. No, he didn't. A tractor engine started farther down the orchard. Kelly appeared between the rows, driving a narrow mower. She stopped when she saw the flags. Even at a distance, Paige could tell she was angry. Kelly shut off the engine and climbed down. Who put that there? She called. John walked toward her. I did. Kelly pulled the flag beside the yellow bellflower from the soil. John's voice sharpened. Put that back. It's under my spray route. It marks a measured point. It marks the middle of a tree. Then set it beside the trunk. Kelly held out the flag. You set it beside the trunk. John took it from her. Paige joined them. Kelly pointed along the diagonal line. You've crossed 6 producing trees and the equipment lane. It's preliminary. Preliminary to what? The sales survey. Isaac never told me the orchard was being sold. John pushed the flag into the soil beside the trunk. I didn't make that decision. You're helping it happen. I'm locating land. That's all. Kelly looked at Paige. Did Brian call you? He said a crew was coming. He called me 10 minutes ago. Said I should pause all orchard work until after closing. What? He offered to cover 3 weeks of lost sales. John removed his sunglasses. That's between you and Brian. Kelly turned on him. 3 weeks now means lost fruit in September. You know that. John did know. He also knew a licensed surveyor couldn't adjust a line to save a tree. He looked toward the marked rows and kept his answer narrow. I'll tell my crew to watch your irrigation hoses. That's generous. Kelly walked back toward the mower without taking the flag again. John waited until she was out of earshot. Show me the plat. Paige opened the photograph on her phone but kept it in her hand. John enlarged the mark. His face changed. You recognize it? Yes. Is it Dad's? Yes. Then why isn't it recorded? I didn't say it wasn't. The courthouse couldn't find it. Did you search survey books or land transfers? Both. With what date? 2011. John looked toward the old fence line. Why that year? Paige decided not to mention Kelly's agreement. That's where the clue led. What clue? The plat. John handed back the phone. This isn't enough to establish a boundary. I know. I need the full drawing, the survey date, and whatever legal document created the lot. Would Dad have kept a copy? At the office. Brian changed the alarm code. John looked down at the grass. When I finished my apprenticeship, Isaac gave me a level that hadn't been accurate in some 20 years, he said. Told me a man should know whether his tools were lying to him. What does that have to do with this? He hid good advice inside bad jokes. That wasn't a joke. No? John put on his sunglasses. Show me where you found the pipe. Paige led him toward the old fence line. Kelly watched from the mower, but didn't follow. At the limestone rock, Paige stopped. The marker isn't here, she said. John looked around. Then why stop here? To see whether you already knew where it was. He gave her a tired look. Your father would have enjoyed that. Paige walked 4 feet downhill and pushed aside the grass. John knelt beside the cap. He cleared the stamp with a soft brush from his vest. Then he placed a measuring pole directly over it. His crew member called out a reading from near the road. John checked a small screen in his hand. That pipe isn't in Brian's deed description, he said. What does that mean? It means the line he gave me runs 12 feet east of it. Is 12 feet a mistake? Sometimes. Across 4 acres? John looked up. You didn't tell me the size? Paige had seen no acreage on the torn paper. I didn't say 4 acres. He stood slowly. No, he said. You didn't. The question hung between them. Paige knew John had seen something in his measurements. John knew Paige possessed more than she had shown him, even though she didn't. A vehicle came through the gate. Brian parked beside the survey truck and got out without removing his jacket. His eyes moved from John's measuring pole to Paige. What's going on? John answered first. We located an older monument. Is it ours? It's on the property. Then use it if it helps. It doesn't match the description you gave me. Brian looked at the iron cap. Dad left old pipes everywhere, not with stamped caps. Brian's jaw shifted. We have a deadline, John. I'm aware. The title company already approved the legal. The title company approved what it was given. Brian turned to Paige. Did you bring him out here? He was already here. What did you show him? An old survey corner. Brian held out his hand. Let me see it. No. His face reddened. Paige, this is company property. It was inside my pen case. John watched Brian absorb that. Brian lowered his hand. Dad kept scrap paper in every drawer he owned. This one led to a marked pipe. That doesn't mean anything. Then why do you need to see it? Brian looked toward the road, where Prairie Grove's pink flags crossed the wet grass. The sale includes this ground. If you interfere with the inspection, they can charge us for the delay. I haven't interfered. Kelly pulled stakes. She pulled one flag from under a tree. I told her to stop working out here. You don't own her work. I control access to the property. Paige stepped closer. For 21 days, you said I did. I said you could stay in the cottage. I didn't give you authority over the orchard. John cleared his throat. I need both of you away from the instrument. Brian turned on him. Can you finish the survey or not? I can finish when I reconcile the monument. Use the deed line. My seal goes on the drawing. Brian stared at him. John didn't raise his voice. My seal. Brian. For a moment, Isaac seemed present in the habits he had left behind. Brian knew better than to ask a surveyor to sign a boundary he hadn't verified. He also knew John had heard the request anyway. Fine, Brian said. Reconcile it quickly. He walked back to his SUV. Before getting in, he called to Paige. Don't make plans for this place. Paige looked at the cottage, then at the flags crossing the orchard. I'm trying to understand it. You have somewhere to sleep until closing. That's all this is. He drove away. John packed the measuring pole into its case. I'll need to check records, he said. So will I. Be careful what you accuse people of before you understand the paper. I haven't accused anyone, not out loud. John returned to his crew. Kelly waited until their truck moved down the road. Then she brought the magnetic locator from her mower. What are you doing? Paige asked. Your note didn't say the pipe was the end. They returned to the marker. Kelly swept a circle around it. Buried fence wire gave sharp broken signals. The iron pipe gave one steady tone. 6 feet downhill, the locator answered again. This sound was lower and wider. Kelly passed over the spot twice. That isn't another pipe, she said. Paige knelt and pressed her hand against the damp ground. Beneath the grass was the hard, square edge of something metal. Don't pull it yet, Paige said. Kelly kept the locator away from the spot. I wasn't going to. You looked like you were. I was thinking. That's what you look like when you're thinking. It keeps people from asking for favors. They cleared the grass by hand. About 2 inches below the surface, Kelly found a sheet of rusted steel. The edge ran straight beneath the soil, then turned at a corner. Paige took pictures before they removed anything else. The box sat flat in a narrow hole. Whoever buried it had lined the bottom with 2 pieces of limestone. Tree roots had grown above one end, but none had broken through the metal. Kelly glanced toward John's survey truck. They're at the road. Can they see us? Probably. Paige sat back. Then we leave it. Kelly looked at her. If Brian sees us carrying out a box, he'll want it. He'll want it if he sees us digging too. We can say we were checking the marker. That works until he walks over. Paige replaced the loose soil. They spread grass across the top, then moved uphill as John's crew member crossed between the trees. The survey work continued for another hour. John placed flags along the road and took measurements near the cottage. He didn't return to the marked pipe. Kelly tried to work, but she kept driving the mower past the same section. Paige carried broken plaster outside and stacked it beside the shed. Neither accomplished much. At noon, John's truck finally left. Kelly parked behind the cottage. I have a cider tank coming at 3, she said. If we're opening that thing, we do it now. They returned with 2 shovels, a pry bar, work gloves, and an empty feed sack. Paige also brought the pen case. The box came free after 20 minutes. It was about the size of a large cash box. Mud covered the bottom. A small handle had rusted flat against the lid. Kelly lifted it onto the feed sack. There's a lock. Could the key be in the pen case? They carried the box to the cottage porch. Paige removed each drafting pen and checked beneath the tray again. There was no key. She unscrewed the pen barrels one at a time. They held dried ink and nothing else. Kelly examined the lock. We can cut it. What if we damage what's inside? The lock is outside. I know where the lock is. Kelly stood. I have bolt cutters. Paige rested her hand on the box. The rust felt rough beneath her palm. Isaac had buried it sometime before he died. He had done that knowing Paige might never understand the note. The thought made her angry in a way grief hadn't allowed before. He could have told her. He could have called her into his office and pointed to a map. He could have given her a key and a file number. Instead, he had turned something important into a test she didn't know she was taking. Kelly noticed her hand had gone still. You want to wait? For what? I don't know. Neither do I. Kelly returned with the cutters. The lock broke on the second try. The lid remained stuck. Paige worked the pry bar into the seam while Kelly held the box. Rust flaked onto the feed sack. When the seal broke, the lid lifted half an inch. The inside smelled like wet metal and old paper. A layer of cloudy plastic covered the contents. Beneath it was a packet wrapped in waxed cloth and tied with green survey string. No money, no jewelry, no second box. Paige felt relieved, then foolish for feeling relieved. Kelly carried the packet inside. They washed their hands, dried the kitchen table, and laid clean dish towels across it. The waxed cloth had protected the papers. The outer corners were damp, but the center remained dry. Paige untied the string. The first page was a survey plat. This one was complete. A heavy boundary enclosed the cottage, the orchard, a narrow piece of creek frontage, and an access strip running to Bellflower Orchard Road. The shape held 4 acres and 2/10. At the center, printed in large letters, was Lot 7. Kelly leaned over the table. That takes almost the whole old orchard. Paige followed the boundary with one finger. The south rows are outside. Newer trees, mostly cider varieties. The oldest ones are inside, all but 3. Isaac's license seal appeared in the lower corner. Beside it was a date in September of 2011. Under the plat lay a deed with a blue recording stamp. Paige read the first paragraph and lost the meaning halfway through. Can you understand this? Kelly took the page. I understand apples and invoices. You understand land agreements. I understood the agreement because Isaac and I shook hands. That isn't reassuring. They read it together, one line at a time. The property description matched the plat. The document referred to Lot 7 as a legally separated parcel. It named the Paige Weaver Lot 7 Trust as the new owner. Paige found her name again on the next page. Sole beneficiary, it said. Isaac was listed as trustee. Upon his death, all rights and title were to pass to Paige without becoming part of his general estate. She read that section 3 times. Kelly pulled out a chair and sat down. Does that mean what it sounds like? I don't know. It sounds like he gave you this place. The county couldn't find it. The paper has a stamp. Paper can be wrong. That stamp has a number. Paige looked closely. The recording information was faint but readable. It showed a book, a page, and the September date. The next document bore the heading, Quiet Title Trust Agreement. It was thicker, with Isaac's signature on the last page, and 2 notarized witness lines. An attached legal description repeated the same boundaries. Another stamp marked it as received by the Madison County Recorder's Office. Paige took out her phone and photographed every page. If this was recorded, why isn't it on the map? Kelly looked toward the orchard. Maybe somebody missed it. For 15 years, people miss trees that stand beside the road. This isn't a tree. No, it's 4 acres. Paige turned to the final folded item. Her name was written across the front. The letter had been sealed inside a plastic sleeve. Isaac's handwriting wandered downhill as it crossed the first page. It had grown less steady during the last year of his life. Paige sat before opening it. Kelly moved toward the door. I can give you privacy. Stay. You sure? Yes. Paige slid out the letter. Paige, if you have this, you found the old north marker. I'm sorry I made you work for something I should have explained. This land is yours. It has been yours in trust since 2011. The recording information is with the deed. The cottage and the old orchard make up Lot 7. They are separate from the rest of the homestead. Do not rely only on these copies. Take them to the recorder and have the filing confirmed. There was an indexing problem when the documents went in. Devin O'Connor helped me correct the record as far as he could. He will remember. I did not put Lot 7 in the will because it does not belong to the estate. That distinction matters. Brian knows the business, Lori knows the farmhouse. Neither of them has been told about this parcel. I chose not to turn it into an argument while I was alive. You may be angry about that. You have a right to be. I kept the arrangement quiet for reasons that began before the trust was made. Devin knows part of that story. Kelly knows what happened on the ground, though she does not know what I filed. The orchard mattered to your mother. You were too young to remember how she walked the North Rows, but you knew the place in other ways. You always went there when the house felt crowded. You do not owe the land your whole life. Sell it if keeping it would make you miserable. Keep it if you can make a home there. Give Kelly a fair chance to continue her work. She earned that chance. The papers establish what I intended. The ground confirms what I measured. You will need both. Dad Page reached the end and kept holding the page. Kelly stood beside the sink. She had gone very still at the mention of her name. Your arrangement started when the trust was filed, Page said. Yes. Did Dad ever tell you he was separating the orchard? No. He said you knew what happened on the ground. I know what I did here. What happened before? Kelly folded her arms. Your father asked whether I could save the old trees. I said some of them. He said that was enough. That's it? No. Page waited. Kelly looked through the open doorway. The orchard was close to being cleared. Brian wanted the ground converted to row crop, corn or soybeans, whichever lease paid better. Isaac let him price it. When? 2011. Page thought of the letter. I need the rest. I've got a tank arriving. Kelly, I'm not avoiding you. I'm telling you I have a business that loses money when I don't show up. She checked the time and swore. I'll come back tonight. What did Brian do? He brought someone out to estimate clearing costs. Isaac stopped it. They had a bad fight near the road. About the orchard? About more than trees. I only heard pieces. What pieces? Kelly picked up her keys. Brian said land was wasted on memory. Isaac said not everything had been left to Brian. Page looked at the deed. Did he mean this? I didn't know there was a this. Why didn't you tell me before? You didn't ask what your brother said 15 years ago. You asked about the trees. Kelly opened the door. Keep those papers dry. Don't leave them in the cottage. Where should I put them? My cidery has a fire cabinet. You have a fire cabinet? I have insurance requirements. They wrapped the documents again and placed them inside the pen case's brown paper. The complete plat was too wide, so Kelly found a flat produce box in her truck. Before leaving, Page walked back to the hole. She and Kelly photographed the limestone supports and measured the box's position from the iron marker. Then, they replaced the soil. The empty metal box went into Kelly's truck beneath a canvas tarp. At the cidery, a delivery driver was waiting beside a stainless steel tank. Kelly spent the next hour checking fittings, signing forms, and arguing about a dent near the lower valve. Page sat at a small office desk behind the pressing room. The place occupied a converted machine shed on rented ground 2 miles from the orchard. It smelled of yeast, apples, and the lemon cleaner Kelly used on every surface. Shelves held cider bottles, orchard tags, pruning records, and stacks of unpaid invoices. Kelly gave Page the key to the fire cabinet. Top shelf, she said. Don't mix it with my tax folder. Nothing deserves that. Page stored the deed, trust agreement, plat, and Isaac's letter inside. She kept digital copies on her phone and emailed them to herself. Then she called the recorder's office. The same clerk answered. I have a recording number, Page said. She read it slowly. Keys clicked on the other end. Hold, please. The hold music played for nearly 4 minutes. When the clerk returned, her voice had changed. The number is valid. Page gripped the phone. Can you see the deed? I can see a document entry, but the image is attached to an older book file. It isn't cross-linked to the current parcel. What does the entry say? I need a supervisor to review it before I read anything from an image that isn't displaying correctly. Does it say Lot 7? Another pause. I can see those words. Page closed her eyes. Does it say my name? I'm sorry. I need the supervisor. When will that happen? She's in a meeting until late afternoon. The property is being sold. I understand. No, the closing is in less than 3 weeks. A survey crew is there now. Then you may need a title examiner or an attorney. We record documents. We don't give legal opinions about them. Page looked through the office window. Kelly was showing the driver the dented tank. Did you give my number to Devin? Yes, I left him a message. Please tell your supervisor this can't wait. I will. The call ended. Page remained at the desk with the phone in her hand. A valid recording number changed the question. The papers weren't only something Isaac had hidden and hoped she would believe. The recorder's own system contained an entry that should have been tied to the land and wasn't. Kelly came into the office carrying 2 paper cups of cider. "The tank stays," she said. "I get a discount and a replacement valve." Paige took 1 cup. "The recording number is real." Kelly sat across from her. "Then the cottage is yours?" "They wouldn't say that." "What would they say?" "That I need someone to examine the title." Kelly drank from her cup. "Do you know someone? Everyone Dad used worked with Brian. Then find somebody he didn't use." Paige's phone rang. The number was local but unfamiliar. She answered. A man's voice said, "Is this Paige Weaver?" "Yes." "This is Devin O'Connor. The recorder's office said you found something Isaac filed in 2011. Paige looked at the locked file cabinet. "I found lot 7. Devin was silent for several seconds. Then he said, "Don't take those papers to your family lawyer." "Why not?" Paige asked. "Because Martin Ellis represents the estate. He also handled papers for Weaverland Surveying. That doesn't make him dishonest. It makes him the wrong first person to call. Can you tell me whether the deed is valid, not over the phone? Can you tell me what you remember? I can tell you in person." They agreed to meet at a diner near the courthouse in half an hour. Devin was already seated when Paige arrived. He had ordered coffee and placed a thick pair of reading glasses beside the cup. His white hair was combed straight back. A folded newspaper occupied the other side of the booth. He stood when Paige approached. "You look like your mother around the eyes," he said. Paige sat across from him. "You knew her?" "Enough to say hello. I knew your father better." She put her phone on the table and opened the photograph of the deed. Devin reached for his glasses. "Do you have the original?" "A recorded copy." "Where is it?" "Somewhere dry." "Good." He enlarged the recording stamp. "There it is," he said. "You remember the number?" "I remember the problem." Paige waited while the server filled his coffee and offered her a menu. She ordered tea because saying no would have required a conversation. When they were alone again, Devin pointed to the number. "Your father brought the plat and deed in together. He had already completed a quiet title process to clean up an old description along the creek. The original homestead deeds used a fence and a cottonwood that hadn't existed for decades. So, he created Lot 7. He surveyed it. The legal work made sure nobody else could claim that little creek strip. Then he deeded the completed parcel into a trust for you. Why can't the recorder find it? They can find it now that they have the number. Why wasn't it tied to the property?" Devin stirred sugar into his coffee. "The new lot was indexed under the trust name. It should also have been cross-indexed under Isaac's name and the parent tract. That second part didn't happen. Why?" "A clerical error." "Whose?" "The office's." "You processed it. I received it." Another clerk entered part of the index. I caught the missing cross-reference later, after Isaac came back asking why the tax map hadn't changed. "What did you do?" "We added a handwritten reference to the old book. Then the county moved records into a new computer system. The trust entry moved over. The handwritten reference didn't." Paige looked at him. "You knew?" "I knew in 2011. I retired years later believing it had been fixed. It wasn't. No. The whole property is under contract. I heard. How? Winterset is not built for secrets." Her tea arrived. Paige kept both hands around the warm cup. Did Dad know the error was still there? He knew the tax map never showed the lot correctly. That's why he kept certified copies. Why didn't he make the office correct it again? Devin removed his glasses. I asked him that. What did he say? He said the recording itself was valid. The index helps people find a document. It doesn't create the document. That sounds like him. Yes, it doesn't answer the question. No, it doesn't. Devin folded his hands on the table. Isaac didn't want the parcel discussed inside his family. Why? He came in angry the first time. That was unusual. Your father could be stubborn for a week without raising his voice once. What happened? Brian wanted him to sell part of the acreage. The orchard? Not only the orchard. Brian had a plan for the western ground too. Paige thought of Kelly's account of the argument near the road. Brian was 19. He was already working every summer at the company. He wanted new equipment, another crew, and a larger office. He believed the land could pay for it. Dad gave him the whole business anyway. Years later, he still gave it to him. Devin nodded. Isaac respected Brian's work. He didn't always respect his judgment. The diner door opened, letting in a gust of cold air. Devin waited until it closed. Brian saw unused land as trapped money, he said. Isaac saw it as something the next decision shouldn't consume, and he put one piece aside for me. Yes. Why me? Because he believed Brian would always fight for the business. He believed Lori would fight for the farmhouse and her accounts. He wasn't sure anyone would fight for your place in the family. Paige looked down at her tea. That sounded too close to pity, and she didn't want land given out of pity. Devin seemed to understand. He didn't say you were weak, he continued. He said you were the one most likely to step aside when everyone else called it practical. Paige rubbed a drop of tea from the rim of the cup. He could have told me. He should have. The direct answer surprised her. Then why didn't he? Partly because you were young when he made the trust. Later, because telling you meant telling the rest of them. He thought secrecy kept the argument away from you. It kept the information away from me. Yes. Now, Brian is selling it. Isaac expected the recorded deed to stop any sale, but nobody found it. Your father trusted records. Sometimes he trusted them more than people. Paige showed Devin the letter. He read it slowly. When he reached his own name, he took off his glasses and cleaned them with a paper napkin. What reasons began before the trust? Paige asked. Devin placed the phone on the table. Your mother loved that orchard. After she died, Isaac nearly sold the whole place because he couldn't stand walking through it. Paige had never heard that. He changed his mind? He did. By the time Brian wanted to sell, Isaac had decided grief wasn't a good reason to erase ground. That's why he saved it? That was part of it. What was the rest? Brian didn't only want expansion. He wanted control. He told Isaac the company and property should be handled as one business. Sell what didn't produce enough. Borrow against what remained. That sounds like Brian. Isaac told him a family wasn't a balance sheet. Paige almost smiled. That also sounds like Dad. After the argument, Isaac came to my office. He said Brian would inherit enough to build something of his own. He wanted one place Brian couldn't use to finance the next thing. The server brought Devin's check. He placed cash beneath the cup without looking at it. Did Brian know Dad made the trust? Not from me. Did Lori? Isaac told me nobody in the house knew. What about Martin? The deed was prepared by a lawyer in Des Moines. Not Martin. Paige sat back. Every choice had kept the same people outside the information. Isaac had used another lawyer, filed quietly, and trusted a faulty index to remain available when needed. Then he had hidden the copies in the orchard and left the path inside a pen case nobody else valued. He planned for them to laugh at it, she said. Devin looked at her. The pen case. I never saw that part. They laughed at the will reading. I'm sorry. Paige shook her head. I don't think Dad knew they would laugh. I think he knew they wouldn't look. Devin wrote a name on his newspaper margin. Daniel Cardenas, independent title examiner. He works out of Indianola, but covers Madison County. He doesn't owe Brian anything. Will he tell me whether I own it? He'll trace every document from the original tract forward. Then he'll tell you what the record supports. Is that different? Usually. Outside the diner, Paige called Daniel and left a message. When she returned to the cottage, Lori's car stood beside the porch. Lori sat inside with the engine running. A grocery sack rested on the passenger seat. She got out when Paige parked. I brought sheets, she said, and towels. You didn't have to. I know. Lori carried the sack inside. She looked around the cleaned room and touched the counter with one finger. You've done a lot. Kelly helped with the water. So? Brian said. Paige set her purse beside the bed. Lori removed folded sheets, towels, canned soup, and a packet of paper napkins from the sack. You asked about old records at the courthouse, she said. Paige looked at her. Who told you? Someone mentioned it to Connor. Who? You know how people talk. No. I know how Connor talks. Lori smoothed the top sheet on the table. Brian is concerned you're trying to complicate the sale. I asked for a record. About this part of the property. Yes. Why? Paige sat on one of the mismatched chairs. Why does Brian need the sale so quickly? Lori didn't answer at once. The offer is good. That isn't what I asked. The business needs cash. Dad's business had money. It had receivables. It had old equipment, payroll, insurance, and clients who take months to pay. Brian wants to keep both crews working, so he's selling the land to fund the office. His share of the sale will fund the office. Mine will let me keep the farmhouse without worrying every month. Paige looked around the one-room cottage. You inherited the accounts. They are not endless. I didn't say they were. Lori's pride showed before her fear did. She didn't want to explain what security cost. She wanted Paige to accept that her own comfort was the smaller need. Interest rates may change, Lori said. Prairie Grove could withdraw. If this sale falls apart, Brian may have to let people go. I may have to sell later for less. And Connor wants to sell some of the equipment. It was left to him. Yes. Then why does he care about the land? Because Brian promised him contract work once the company expands. The whole arrangement finally became clear. Brian needed the sale to make the company larger and prove he could run it better than Isaac had. Lori needed the sale to turn uncertain land into money she could count. Connor wanted whatever could be sold quickly, followed by a place in Brian's larger business. None of them had needed to hate Paige. They only needed her claim to be inconvenient. Lori took a folded document from her purse. What is that? Paige asked. An occupancy agreement. For 3 weeks? It confirms you'll leave at closing. Prairie Grove requested clean possession. Paige didn't touch it. There's also a general release, Lori said. It says you have no interest in the homestead. Why would I sign that? Because Brian is willing to give you a cash settlement. How much? He hasn't set the amount, so nothing. It would be something fair. Fair for what? For avoiding a family dispute. Paige stood. Did Brian ask you to bring this? Lori gathered the papers against her coat. We all need the sale. You didn't answer. Yes, tell him I'm not signing. Paige, don't turn an old note into a disaster for everyone. Lori had said more than she realized. Paige watched her carefully. What old note? Lori's face shifted. Connor heard you found something in the pen box. From whom? I don't know. Do you know what it says? No. Does Brian? No, that's the problem. Lori stepped toward the door. We can take care of you too. You don't have to fight us. Paige opened the door for her. I'm not asking anyone to take care of me. Lori left the sheets and soup behind. 10 minutes later, Connor called. I heard Lori messed that up, he said. What do you want? I can handle Brian. For what? A percentage of whatever he pays you. Paige looked at the orchard through the open window. You don't even know what I found. Doesn't matter. Brian thinks it can slow closing. That gives it value. And if I don't want a settlement, then you're making a mistake. It's mine to make. Connor laughed softly. You really think that because Dad put something in a box? Paige ended the call. Daniel returned hers before she could set down the phone. I can start tomorrow, he said, but I'll need every page you found and access to the physical marker. Paige looked toward the hidden iron cap. You can have both. Daniel arrived in a dark blue sedan with a scanner, a camera, and 2 canvas bags of records. He met Paige and Kelly at the cidery before opening time. Kelly unlocked the file cabinet. Paige set the papers on the office desk. Daniel didn't touch them at first. Tell me how you found these, he said. Paige gave him the sequence from the will reading forward. He asked for dates, names, and every place the documents had been stored. She showed him the photographs taken before the lockbox moved. She showed him the hole, the iron cap, and the broken lock. Daniel read it twice. Why did you write her instead of my? It sounded less impossible that way. He nodded. Keep writing everything down. Impossible things get easier to examine when they have dates. He scanned the deed, trust agreement, plat, and letter. Then he inspected the recording stamp under a small light. This was made by the county's old mechanical stamper, he said. The ink and number format fit the year. So, it's real? It looks real. Looking real and being supported by the record are different steps. Paige was getting used to careful answers. Daniel compared Isaac's plat seal to the mark on the deed attachment. Same impression, he said. But we'll check the state board's file. Kelly stood in the pressing room doorway with her keys. I have to pick up bottles, she said. Are you going to the orchard? After the courthouse, Daniel said. I'll meet you there. She looked at Paige. Don't let anyone tell you a copy is enough. Daniel almost smiled. I won't. At the recorder's office, the supervisor had pulled the original book file. The deed image appeared on an old microfilm reader. It was faint, but every page matched Paige's copy. The recording number, trust name, legal description, and notary information were all present. Daniel traced the index entry with a capped pen. "There's the error," he said. The trust appeared under the letter P for Page. The parent tract remained under Isaac's name. Nothing connected the two. The supervisor looked over his shoulder. When the records moved into the digital system, the software treated this as a document without a parcel link. "Can it be corrected?" Page asked. "Yes, after review." "How long?" "I won't promise a time. There's a closing, I know." Daniel turned to Page. "The correction helps future searches. It doesn't decide whether the deed worked when recorded. What decides that? The document, the chain before it, the trust terms, and whether anything later defeated it. Did anything? I haven't finished." They spent the morning moving backward through the records. Isaac's title to the parent tract was clean. The quiet title court file resolved the uncertain creek description. The new plat created Lot 7 from the cleared description. The deed conveyed that lot into the trust. Daniel found no later mortgage against Lot 7, no tax sale, no transfer out of the trust. Nothing showed Isaac trying to take it back. The proposed Prairie Grove deed was different. It used the older full tract description as if Lot 7 had never been removed. "That's why an ordinary search missed it," Daniel said. "They started with the current tax parcel and moved backward through links. The link to this deed is broken. Does Prairie Grove own it if they close first? No. A closing doesn't repair a seller's lack of title. But fighting afterward would cost more and take longer. So we stop it before. That would be sensible." Daniel requested certified copies from the recorder. He also ordered the quiet title court file and sent Isaac's seal image to the state licensing board. By 1, they were at the orchard. John stood near the creek with his measuring equipment. His crew had placed new flags along the diagonal line. He watched Daniel approach. "Title examiner?" John asked. "Yes." "Independent?" "Yes." John looked at Page. "Good." Daniel showed him the certified recorder image of the full plat. He did not show Isaac's letter. John studied the bearings. "This explains the pipe. Can you locate the remaining corners?" Daniel asked. "If they still exist." They began at the old north marker. John set his instrument over the cap. His crew member carried the pole downhill. The next calculated point fell near the creek, where tall weeds covered a low shelf of ground. The magnetic locator found a second iron pipe beneath 3 inches of soil. Its cap carried Isaac's seal. John cleaned it with his brush. "2 corners," Page said. "2 monuments," John corrected. "Let me finish." The eastern corner stood near the cottage access strip. A fence post had grown around it, leaving only half the cap visible. The 4th marker had disappeared beneath gravel at the road entrance, but John found the original reference measurements in Isaac's plat. For 3 hours, he measured each line. The boundary enclosed the cottage, most of the old orchard, and the creek frontage. It did not follow the pink flags Brian's description had produced. John returned to his truck and began drawing on a field tablet. "Will you certify it?" Page asked. "I'll certify where the recorded plat and monuments put it. Brian hired you. He hired my license. He doesn't own it. What will you tell him? That his sale description includes a previously divided parcel. Will you tell him who owns it? That isn't my opinion to give." Daniel looked at John's screen. "Label it exactly as the plat labels it." John entered the words, Lot 7. Below them, he added 4 2/10 acres. He included the recording reference and the locations of the 3 surviving monuments. When he finished, he applied his digital professional seal. Page had seen survey seals all her life. They appeared on office papers, field books, subdivision plans, and frame licenses. This one was different because it didn't preserve Isaac's intention as a memory. A living surveyor had measured the ground again. The old seal and the new one named the same lot. John printed a preliminary certified copy from the truck. "It still needs the full office review," he said. "When?" "Tomorrow morning. Before Brian gets it, he's the client. He'll receive my boundary exception." "Which tells him what? That I cannot include Lot 7 in the larger tract without resolving the older recorded plat." Daniel folded the copy into his file. "That's enough for now." John looked toward the pink flags. "I'll remove those from inside the lot." Kelly had arrived during the survey. She stood beside the yellow bellflower while John's crew pulled the diagonal line 1 flag at a time. She waited until they reached her. "This one too," she said, pointing at the trunk. The crew member removed it. Kelly watched the truck leave. "Can I spray tomorrow?" John leaned out his window. "I don't control the orchard." "No," Kelly said. "You just put lines through it." He accepted that and drove away. The state board replied the following afternoon. Isaac's personal surveyor's stamp on file matched the seals on the 2011 plat and the iron caps. The board's verification included his license number and active status at the time of the survey. Daniel completed his title report that evening. He returned to the cidery with a bound copy and a digital file stored on 2 drives. The record supports the trust's ownership, he said. The trust terms transferred full control to Paige when Isaac died. Paige kept her hands under the desk. Say it without the title language. Lot 7 did not pass through the will. It was already held for you. When your father died, you became its owner. Kelly set down the bottle she was labeling. Owner now? Yes. Not after the index is fixed. Now. Paige looked at the office walls, the invoice shelves, and the fire cabinet containing Isaac's letter. Her first clear thought wasn't about the value. It was that Brian could no longer tell her how many days she was allowed to sleep in the cottage. Daniel slid the report across the desk. There's still risk. The estate can challenge the trust. Prairie Grove can demand a delay. Someone can argue capacity, forgery, notice, or procedure. The record is strong, but people fight strong records every day. Would they win? I don't see a valid reason they should. Kelly turned the bottle in her hand. That isn't the same answer. No, Daniel said. It's the honest one. A knock sounded at the outer door. A woman in a navy raincoat stood in the pressing room. Kelly went to let her in. This is Kristen Fisher, she said when they entered the office. She runs Heritage Guest Properties. Kristen carried a folder with photographs of restored farm cottages and small orchards. I heard the old Weaver cottage may not be part of the development sale, she said. I wanted to ask before rumors become facts. Paige glanced at Daniel. Who told you? Kelly told me there was a title question. She didn't tell me your documents. Kelly didn't apologize. Kristen has been asking about the orchard for 2 years. Kristen opened the folder. I'm not here to buy trouble. I'm interested in a lease partnership if the title is confirmed. We restore the cottage for short guest stays during part of the year. You keep it as your home the rest. The orchard becomes part of the experience, but Kelly keeps operating it. That sounds crowded, Paige said. It can be. That's why it needs the right agreement. What is the land worth without your agreement? Kristen took out a written appraisal. Based on creek access, road frontage, the cottage, and the orchard's age, about $410,000. Paige stared at the number. Brian had called the cottage a place she could use until demolition. Connor had laughed at the pen case. Lori had offered an unnamed settlement for a signature. The rejected corner was worth enough to change Paige's immediate life. Kristen kept her voice level. I'm not offering to buy it today. I'm offering to explore a partnership. If all you want is a sale, I can make an offer after my inspection. Paige closed the appraisal. I don't know what I want yet. That's a better answer than a quick yes. Kristen left her folder and went with Kelly to inspect the pressing room. Daniel placed the title report beside Paige's hand. Make 3 secure copies, he said. 1 with me, 1 somewhere outside the property, and 1 you control. Paige stored a copy in Kelly's fire cabinet. Daniel kept another. The third went into a locking document bag she carried with her. She did not call Brian. She did not call Lori or Connor. That night, she returned to the cottage, locked the door, and set John's sealed survey beside Isaac's pen case. Her phone lit with an email from Brian. The Prairie Grove closing had been moved forward by 2 days. Attendance was required from anyone claiming an interest in the property. Paige forwarded the email to Daniel. He called 2 minutes later. Don't reply tonight, he said. Why did they move it? Pressure. Prairie Grove probably wants a clean answer before spending more. Can they close without correcting the description? They can try to sign. The recorder may reject the deed, or it may enter the same broken chain we're trying to fix. Brian knows John found Lot 7. He knows John found a survey problem. He still may not know what you have. What should I do? Attend. Bring nothing you can't replace. Paige packed the title report, certified deed copies, trust agreement, state board verification, and John's preliminary survey into the locking document bag. The original papers remained in Kelly's fire cabinet. At 1:30 in the morning, headlights crossed the cottage wall. Paige sat up. A vehicle moved slowly along the orchard lane with its lights off. The engine remained running. She pulled on Kelly's rubber boots and went to the plywood window. Moonlight caught the red side of Isaac's old truck. Connor now owned it. He stopped near the creek, Paige took her phone and slipped outside. Connor stood beside one of John's marked corners. He bent, pulled a blue witness flag from the ground, and threw it into the truck bed. Connor, he spun around. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "I live here." "You're supposed to be asleep." Paige raised her phone. "Put the flag back. It's a piece of plastic. It marks the corner. The pipe marks the corner. So, you know what it is." Connor walked toward her. "You've got everybody tied up over an old scrap Dad didn't even put in the will. You don't know what he put in the pen case. I know it isn't worth $2,400,000. That's not what the land is worth. It is if your nonsense kills the whole sale." He reached for her phone. Paige stepped back. "Don't." Connor stopped. The camera was pointed at his face. "I came to clear the equipment lane," he said. "At 1 in the morning, John's crew left stakes where Kelly runs machinery. Kelly didn't ask you. Brian did." The answer came too quickly. "Brian told you to pull them?" "I didn't say that. You just did." Connor looked toward the cottage. He was deciding how frightened she was. For most of their lives, Paige had made that easy for him. He lowered his voice. "Listen, whatever paper you found can be challenged. Dad was sick. Everybody knows that. Maybe he forgot what he signed. Maybe somebody copied his stamp. You drag this into closing, and the estate will keep you in court until you can't afford groceries. You offered to handle it for a cut yesterday. That was me helping. This is you helping too?" He took another step. Paige kept the phone steady. Connor stopped again. "Fine," he said. "Keep your flags." He retrieved the one from the truck bed and dropped it at her feet. "Put it back where you found it. You do it. I wasn't the one who moved it." He stared at her, then pushed the stake into the soil. It leaned several inches from its original hole. "The exact place," Paige said. Connor laughed once. "You don't own people because you found a line in the dirt. No, I'm asking you to leave." He walked back to the truck. As he drove away, Paige saw that a second witness flag was missing near the cottage access strip. She called Kelly first. Kelly arrived in sweatpants under her work coat. Daniel came 20 minutes later. John reached the orchard before dawn. Paige showed them the video. John watched it twice. "He moved a survey witness stake," he said. "Is that illegal?" Kelly asked. "It can be. The actual monuments are still in place, but interfering with survey markers is serious. Can you replace it?" Paige asked. "I recorded every position." He found the second flag in the ditch. Tire tracks crossed the soft shoulder near it. Daniel photographed the tracks, the empty flag holes, and John's replacement measurements. "Do we call the sheriff?" Kelly asked. Paige looked toward the road. "I want it documented. I don't want Connor arrested." Daniel nodded. "John can add a tampering note to the certified survey. Keep the video secure." John drove to his office after sunrise and issued the final drawing before noon. His certified boundary followed Isaac's recorded Lot 7 plat. A written exception stated that the proposed full-track sale description conflicted with the older parcel. Another note documented the two removed witness flags and their restoration. Brian called Paige at 12:15. She answered with Daniel beside her. "You recorded Connor," Brian said. "He pulled survey flags. He moved 2 stakes. At 1 in the morning, he was clearing access. That's what he said after he noticed my phone." Brian lowered his voice. "Delete the video." "No. You're making him look like a criminal. He chose what the video shows. He was trying to keep the closing on schedule, so you sent him." "I didn't send him anywhere. Then why do you know what he was trying to do?" Brian paused. Paige could hear office phones ringing behind him. That office was his now, along with its clients, payroll, and debts. He had wanted the responsibility for years. He still believed enough money could make every difficult part behave. "John sent an exception," he said. "I know. He's being overly cautious." He measured the old markers. "The estate deed covers the full tract." "Does it?" "Yes." "Then you won't need me to delete anything." "Paige, Prairie Grove is prepared to close tomorrow. Lori has signed. I have signed. If you appear with an unverified claim, Martin will move to have it dismissed. Then I'll see you tomorrow." She ended the call. Brian called Daniel next. Daniel let the call go to voicemail. The message lasted nearly 3 minutes. Brian said the Lot 7 plat was an abandoned survey concept. He said Isaac never intended to transfer the ground. He said John should revise his drawing around the current tax parcel because that was the description under contract. Daniel played the message for John. John's face hardened. "He wants me to ignore my own field work." He called it an abandoned concept. The monuments aren't concepts. That afternoon, Brian went to the recorder's office with Martin. Paige learned about it from Devin, who had stopped there to sign a sworn statement about the 2011 filing. They asked the supervisor to approve the Prairie Grove deed before closing, Devin said. Martin argued the old trust entry wasn't connected to the tax parcel and shouldn't delay the full transfer. What did the supervisor say? She would address competing records at the meeting. So, she's coming? Yes. Did Brian see your statement? No. Does he know the deed was found? He knows the office is reviewing an old filing. Martin asked whether you had produced the deed. The supervisor wouldn't answer. Brian still believed Paige had a plat fragment, a letter, and John's cautious survey. He believed the actual title record remained too confused to stop a signed transaction. That belief made him more certain, not less. He sent Paige a second email at 6 that evening. It included the closing agenda and a copy of the deed he planned to present. The legal description still contained the full 86 acres. Lot 7 had not been removed. At 9 the next morning, Paige entered a conference room in the county administration building with Daniel beside her. The locking document bag hung from her shoulder. Kelly sat in the back row. She had closed the cidery for the morning, something she had never done for a family meeting. Devin sat beside her with his sworn statement in a plain folder. John stood near the wall carrying a survey tube. At the long table, Brian had placed name cards in front of every expected signer. Lori wore a navy dress and Isaac's gold watch. Though the watch had been left to Brian, he had loaned it to her for the meeting. Connor sat at the far end. He looked at Paige only once. Martin arranged papers beside Brian. Across from them sat Prairie Grove's representative, the company's closing attorney, and a banker. 3 folders with yellow tabs waited in front of them. The recorder's supervisor entered last. She carried the old index book and a certified document packet. Brian rose. Now that everyone's here, we can clear up the distraction and complete the sale. Paige took a seat beside Daniel. She did not open the bag. Prairie Grove's attorney began with the purchase agreement. The company had agreed to buy the full Weaver homestead tract for $2,400,000. The closing deadline had been moved forward by mutual agreement of the listed sellers. He reviewed access, taxes, environmental inspection, and possession. Then he reached the survey exception. Our surveyor has identified a conflict near the Orchard Cottage, he said. We need that addressed before funds move. Brian slid a paper across the table. The estate's legal description is controlling. The pipe John found was one of my father's old reference points. It never created a separate parcel. John remained by the wall. Prairie Grove's representative looked at him. Is that your professional opinion? No, John said. Brian spoke before she could ask more. John was hired to restake the current deed. He went beyond the scope after Paige showed him a torn piece of an old draft. It was a recorded plat, John said. You haven't established a valid transfer. I established the boundary shown on that plat. Martin placed one hand on Brian's arm. Let me handle the legal question. Brian pulled away. He had arranged the buyer, the deadline, the survey, and the signatures. He had brought everyone into a room where paperwork usually moved in the direction of the person selling the most land. He believed hesitation would make him look uncertain, so he removed it. My father owned the full tract when he died, Brian said. The estate has authority to sell it. Paige received no land under the will. She received a pen case. She is using sentimental papers and an old ground marker to pressure this family for money. Lori looked down. Connor folded his arms. Brian signed a statement Martin placed before him. It affirmed that, to his knowledge, no valid unlisted ownership interest affected the orchard parcel. He passed it to Lori. She hesitated. Sign, Brian said. We've already answered this. Lori signed. Martin pushed the full 86-acre deed toward Prairie Grove. Brian looked directly at Paige. If you have a demand, make it now. Otherwise, we're closing. Paige said nothing. The recorder's supervisor opened the old index book. Before any deed is accepted, she said, I need to hear the competing record. She turned to Paige. Paige unzipped the document bag. I don't have a demand, she said. I have a recorded deed. She gave the certified copy to the recorder. Brian leaned toward Martin. Lori stopped breathing for a second. Connor's arms came apart. The recorder compared the copy to the packet she had brought. She turned several pages, checked the recording number, and opened the old index book. This was received in September of 2011, she said. Martin reached across the table. May I see it? Daniel handed him another copy. The document conveyed Lot 7 into a trust, Daniel said. Isaac Weaver served as trustee. Paige Weaver was the sole beneficiary. The trust terms transferred full control to her upon Isaac's death. Brian looked at Paige. Where did you get this? She didn't answer him. Martin read quickly. Why wasn't it found in the estate title search? The parent track cross-index was omitted, Daniel said. I traced the chain through the original book entry, the trust index, and the quiet title file. So there was an error, an indexing error, not a defect in the deed. Martin looked toward the recorder. She nodded. The recording itself was completed. Brian pushed back his chair. Dad could have prepared this and changed his mind. Devin opened his folder. He didn't. Brian turned. You weren't part of our family. No, I was the deputy recorder who processed the filing. Devin placed his sworn statement on the table. Isaac returned more than once to confirm the lot had been recorded. He knew the tax index was incomplete. He kept the certified copies because of that problem. Martin read the statement. Connor pointed toward Paige's papers. A stamp can be copied. Daniel slid forward the state board verification. Isaac's professional seal matches the seal held on file during the year of recording. The notary record is valid. The court file, deed, trust agreement, and plat all carry consistent dates. John removed the final survey from its tube and spread it across the table. The ground matches too, he said. His drawing showed the cottage, orchard rows, creek frontage, and access strip. Isaac's old recorded seal appeared beside John's new license seal. John pointed to the north corner. My crew recovered 3 original monuments. Their positions match Isaac's recorded plat. I certified the boundary independently. Prairie Grove's representative studied the drawing. So, Lot 7 is not part of the seller's tract. That's correct, John said. Brian's face had lost its color. You work for me. You hired the survey, John said. You didn't hire the result. The recorder placed one finger on the trust entry. For the purposes of recording today's transaction, Lot 7 was legally severed from the parent tract in 2011. The recorded trust names Paige Weaver as sole beneficiary. Under its terms, title now belongs to her. The sentence entered the room without drama. No one shouted, no door opened. The ground outside stayed exactly where it had always been. But Paige no longer needed Brian's permission to stand on it. Martin removed the full tract deed from the closing stack. This description cannot be recorded as written, the recorder said. Prairie Grove's attorney spoke quietly with the company representative. They compared John's survey to the development plan. After several minutes, the representative looked at Lori and Brian. We're still prepared to purchase the remaining acreage, she said. The price will be adjusted fairly to exclude Lot 7. Our access plan can be moved east. Brian stared at the table. His company would receive less cash, but the sale would survive. Lori would still have enough to keep the farmhouse. The outcome wasn't what either wanted. It also wasn't ruin. Lori signed the corrected agreement first. Brian signed after her. Connor said nothing. The recorder lifted John's added report. There is also a note concerning removed survey flags. Connor looked at Paige. She could have played the video. She could have asked for a separate investigation. I want the boundary restored and no further interference, she said. That's all I'm asking for. John answered before Connor could. I'll set permanent witness posts. The recorder made a note for the file. The tampering will remain documented. The closing continued on the remaining land. Outside the building, Brian caught up with Paige near the steps. You could have told me, he said. She turned. You asked what I found. You never asked whether it was real. I had a company depending on that sale. And you signed a statement saying I had no interest. I believed the estate owned it. John told you there was an older boundary. He told me there was a conflict. That was the time to stop. Brian looked back through the glass doors. Lori stood inside with Martin. Connor had already left. Dad set me up to fail, he said. No, Dad left you a business. He left me a place to live. You tried to sell both. Brian didn't argue with that. What happens now? He asked. The property line gets marked. Kelly keeps working the orchard. Nobody enters without calling me. You mean us. I mean everybody. He put his hands into his jacket pockets. Are you going to sue? No. Contest the rest of the estate? No. Relief crossed his face, followed by shame that she had seen it. Paige continued. That doesn't mean things go back to normal. They weren't normal. It was the first honest thing he had said to her in weeks. No, she said, they weren't. She left him on the steps. 2 days later, Paige met Kelly and Kristen at the cottage. They placed 3 chairs beneath the yellow bellflower and spread the proposed agreements across a folding table. Kristen's appraisal remained $410,000. I'm not selling, Paige said. Kristen capped her pen. Then we discuss use. The cottage is my home. Full-time? Yes. Then guests don't stay in your home. Kelly pointed toward the failing shed. That can be restored. Kristen inspected it. With a new foundation, permits, and a great deal of patience. I've got some patience, Paige said. They agreed that Kristen's company would finance restoration of the shed as a small heritage guest house. Paige would retain ownership. Kristen would manage limited seasonal bookings and receive an agreed share until the investment was repaid. Kelly received a formal orchard lease, renewable in long terms instead of by yearly permission. She kept control of pruning, harvest, and cider production. Paige received a modest land share from orchard sales and took responsibility for records, bookings, and the property website. What do we call it? Kristen asked. Kelly looked toward the north row. Isaac's North Row Orchard, Paige said. Kelly considered the name. He would have complained. He complained about everything with his name on it. Then it's right. The first work began the following Monday. John set permanent boundary posts beyond the mower lanes. Daniel filed the corrected cross index with the recorder. Kelly replaced 2 diseased trees with grafts taken from the oldest bellflower. Paige worked on the cottage beside paid local tradespeople and anyone Kelly could persuade with cider and lunch. They stripped the damaged plaster, repaired the chimney, and replaced the plywood window with glass. The roof took 6 days because the rear rafters were worse than they looked. Lori came once with Isaac's wooden rocking chair in her car. This was on the back porch, she said. I thought you might want it. Paige helped carry it inside. Lori looked around the new walls. I shouldn't have brought those release papers. No, I was scared. I know. That was not forgiveness, and Lori didn't ask Paige to pretend it was. May I come to the orchard opening? She asked. Paige adjusted the chair beside the window. You may come as a guest, Lori nodded. I understand. At the early summer opening, Kelly poured cider beneath a canvas awning. Kristen showed the restored guest shed to the first visitors. Devin found his own signature copied on a small display about the orchard's recorded boundary. Daniel complained that the legal description had been shortened too much, then stayed for a second glass. Brian came late. He remained near the road until Paige saw him. He had brought Isaac's old brass level, the inaccurate one John remembered from his apprenticeship. It was in the office cabinet, Brian said. I thought it belonged here. Paige accepted it. You can stay, she said. He looked toward the porch. Are you sure? For today. It wasn't a repaired childhood. It was a clear answer, which was more useful. By July, the cottage had a sound roof, clean water, warm walls, and a blue front door. Paige's name appeared on the tax record beside Lot 7. Kelly's orchard lease sat in the file cabinet with Isaac's letter. The guest house's first season was booked without giving anyone access to Paige's kitchen or her bed. If stories about young people rebuilding a life after family betrayal matter to you, subscribe and return for the next inheritance story. One evening after the visitors had gone, Paige carried Isaac's pen case onto the porch. She placed it beside the old brass level and sat in his rocking chair. Kelly's mower moved slowly near the creek. The restored guest house glowed beyond the trees. A jar of uneven apples rested on the windowsill behind Paige, exactly where Lori used to move them. The survey posts were visible if she looked for them. Most of the time, she didn't need to. Paige rested both feet on her own porch and watched the last light settle across the blossoming orchard rows.